So it looks a bit different. A lot of this looks a bit different. Yeah, quite a few bits on recently, to say the least. So this really hasn't been a priority, but it's come along. It has come along. Things have happened. There's an engine in there, brake lines, lots of things have been done. Actually, I didn't quite realise how much I'd filmed, but having a quick look, a bit of a shame to have actually not shown you guys that, because I've filmed rebuilding the gearbox, I filmed refitting the engine. The engine bay's actually been painted. So yeah, a lot's been going on over the last year. So yeah, I think what we're going to do is go back in time a bit and have a look at some of that footage, because there's a bit of a story basically. Start at the gearbox rebuild, because if you saw when we pulled the engine out, in short, gearbox had no oil in it, and all the main bearings were kaput. They ran dry. How that happened, we'll get into that in a bit. But yeah, so let's go have a look at the gearbox being rebuilt. Don't know, maybe we'll make it a longer video that just kind of catches up somewhat, because yeah, I didn't even realise I filmed fitting the engine. Yeah, so let's do that. And then once you kind of caught up somewhat, I can show you around the car next time or something, and then progress. Welcome back. There's been a bit of progress. Yeah, basically, as you would have seen at the end of the last video, the gearbox is knackered. I've already stripped down the RS16i gearbox, and my dad gave me a RS turbo gearbox that had just laying about for years. So that was quite lucky. I think that's saved me a bit of a fortune, and we get a little upgrade out of it. So yeah, let's quickly show you around. As you can see, the gearbox casing here looks quite tidy. Here is the remains of this turbo gearbox, giving up all the good bits. And then if we go around here, you can see another pile of parts. So where should we start? With some gloves. So here's the original gear set, and I think I'm covering it, but there's a lot of dog teeth missing. So we've got that gear set had a gearbox, which I don't know if it's the bearings or what. And then we've got this gear set out of the RS Turbo. Anyway, none of that's interesting. These are the interesting bits. So 16i open differential, that's how they came. So yeah, they never came with the slipper, but now we've got a RS Turbo limit slip diff. So if anything, out of all of this, at least we get to upgrade our differential. As you can see, all the nice shiny bits, everything's been zinc coated. In here we've got all the bearings, seals, gaskets and such. So yeah, so hopefully I'm gonna basically put these side by side and just go over them really and see what condition they're in. If one's better than the other, go with that, or if I need to, bust them apart. I know a lot of synchros are broken on here, so I think this one might be the one. Anyway, we'll see. So main shaft is obviously a lot more simple, not so much going on there. That should be relatively easy to tackle. So yeah, sorry didn't film pulling these apart, but it was kind of just a frantic undoing of bolts, so you didn't miss too much. So there's another seal here for the input shaft. So the bearing races they're going to need, I'm chilling them down in the freezer, hopefully shrink them a little bit. So whilst that's happening, I can replace this seal and the seal on the selector input. So yeah, we'll get to work on that. Cool. So that's that one. Yep, that's that one. Happy days. Okay, cool. So all we're waiting on now is the races for the diff to cool down. So this is quite interesting. I've knocked the bearing race out for this half, and there's actually these conical washers, which are like a spring-loaded washer that sit in here behind the race, and then what that'll do will apply an actual pressure to the diff. So yeah, it's kind of interesting, and that's why this race has to be staked in, as you can see. Yeah, quite cool. Okay, so the new races fitted and the drive shaft seals. So I think that's basically it. So yeah, those washers I was talking about, it's quite interesting because this race will actually, I haven't got enough hands here, but you can see it moves. So once we clamp the two halves of the gearbox together, those washers will actually provide the correct clamping load that's required for the diff. So there's no kind of setup. Yeah, it's quite clever. Okay, so I've got most things laid out here. These all need to go in here. The rest of the gearbox is around there, but it just will take up space. I'm sure this is all going to be fine. Maybe. Nice. We'll see. We'll just do it. Okay, pop the diff in. That bit's easy. So of course this needs to run along the speedo drive. Okay, that should. So the reverse idler goes on next. This way up, and then this little notch will meet it. So that's in there. Cool. Okay, so these you need to mesh together and then install at once. Okay. I think there we go. So they're all meshed. Okay, that's cool because that, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little peg there that stops that. So that's your shifter. Alright, so just applying some sealant in between the two halves here. Unfortunately, we haven't got sound, but yeah, so there's a lot of jigging basically to get the linkage in place, but eventually we got there. So yeah, this is just putting the two halves of the gearbox together. So just getting it to seat a little bit better by giving it a knock with the mallet. So on the two bearings, you can actually, there's a little groove in which circlips have to go into. So essentially you need to knock the casing into place to the point that you can see both those grooves. Yeah, as mentioned earlier, we had all the hardware sandblasted, zinc coated, so that's all the original stuff. If anyone's familiar, you might actually notice that one of the bolts on the bottom right there is in the wrong hole, but we find that out later. So that's those circlets on there, and you can see that they actually line up with the little gasket. So this is like a foam gasket, so you've got to be a little bit careful when torquing this. Actually managed to snap one of these bolts, but luckily having two gearboxes, it wasn't such an issue. There we go, that's it. Right, so yeah, that's the gearbox all done, fully assembled, all new bearings, all new gaskets, and gone mad with the zinc coating. So that's pretty cool. Just need a new reverse switch, but I'll sort that out next trip to Burton's. Right, so I hope that was interesting. Yeah, in the next video we'll look into actually when we strip the car down. And then I've got some footage of actually refitting the engine. Probably won't have this introduction, just felt it necessary because of the big gap. But yeah, alright, last one, cheers.